The NCC appears to us to constitute a centralization of power that is impermissible under the Disaster Management Act.
We're no longer as rich as we thought we were, and the country is in a desperate situation. So
this is inevitable.
The country is in a recession, tax revenue is weak.
It's only through testing, tracking and tracing that we're going to break the chain of infection in South Africa.
What's happening behind the scenes in South Africa? It's quietly becoming a police state.
In China, it was several months after the lockdown began to be lifted before bankruptcy numbers started to rise.
Here in South Africa, soldiers were recently cleared of the murder of Collins Khoza.
The lockdown for phase 5 was not to cure us from the virus.
The conduct of the government must never be unchecked.
The question I want to answer today is, what is God's message to us in this troublesome, trying time we are facing?
These vultures do not care if the economy collapses, if we head towards a kleptocracy, if repression and disorder indeed become the order of the day, or if millions of children go to bed hungry. Their sole interests revolve around securing a power base from which to operate and stuff their greedy pockets.
My sense is that they created the National Command Council in order to project a sense of emergency.
The Constitution gave the South African executive all the powers it needed within existing structures to deal with this crisis.
I'm actually quite concerned with this Command Council.
They complete control of the country with no scrutiny whatsoever.
Actually coming out with policies like we live in the Soviet Union era.
It is not clear as to what is the legislative piece that the president used to institute or put together the National Command Council. So if you read the Constitution, for example, there is nothing called the National Command Council in the South African Constitution.
Why did the ANC do this? Why did the government create this unnecessary, unconstitutional entity?
All of these things are happening in a vacuum where South Africans have no say, where there has been very little consultation, and also decisions that are made by people behind closed doors. And that is not in the spirit of what a constitutional democracy would entail.
If 5 weeks of stage 5 lockdown was to prepare the healthcare facilities, then one simply has to take a look at the state facilities to realize the banana republic we have become.
Instead of the country being run by the president and 28 ministers, we have it being run by 19 ministers. And in layman's terms, the impact of that is Parliament sits back and goes, we are used to critiquing government as a whole. We have structures to do that. And you've now gone and centralized power from 29 people into 19 people. And so the structures that we used to have in place are no longer adequate.
That is practically tyranny, because these are people acting without a democratic mandate, and these are people who are not acting under any sort of empowering legislation. So the decision to constitute National Corona Command Council is fatally flawed and probably illegal.
So no, the Command Council is not the government, and to the extent that they are governing, it appears to me that that would be unlawful and unconstitutional.
Failure to curtail corruption during this period will simply put the nail in the coffin.
Everything is drenched in corruption. Why will this not be?
That lot running the Command Council and Cabinet, it represents the worst of us as a society.
You don't have to be a constitutional genius to understand that the actions that have been taken for people who are acting fraudulently and corruptly and unlawfully are just not sufficient.
It is an unnecessary, complicated mess.
It should not have happened.
So the National Command Council has actually posed as a middleman, and it has no legal standing. So it actually delays and complicates the process.
So what has started to happen, which is obviously very problematic, is that there's starting to be a lot of power centered around a mystery body that South Africans have no idea who forms part of it.
In communities, simple food parcel distribution is being manipulated, not by the desperately hungry, but by political actors who use humanitarian aid as a bargaining chip.
So that's the people that they're dealing with. They find democracy and parliamentary democracy very frustrating. They find accountability very frustrating because it's their time to control.
They are incompetent and corrupt. They simply don't know how to run a state.
And now it's becoming clear, and it's said more and more, that situation must be utilized and maximized for purposes of radical economic transformation.
We've started to see the punting of the national health insurance. Government saying that, if we had national health insurance, we would not be as badly affected by this pandemic as we are, which of course is false.
They had all the experts. They knew best on what was the response. And the response was shutting down the economy completely, which is what they wanted to do for a very long time.
If we fail in our duties to protect the public from these corrupt vultures during this time, we lose the last fragment of hope that we can offer to people.
These are the characters that they're dealing with. They've got no interest at all of broader South Africa's challenges, but the interest of their own true pursuance of a national democratic revolution.
Government is starting to rally around some of these problematic economic ideas that they've had. And my worry is that our country is going to be in such a state of collapse that, it's going to be much easier to punt as opposed to really pushing for real reforms.
There's an acronym, the NDR, National Democratic Revolution.
The regulations that have come through Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma are informed by that agenda.
So the National Democratic Revolution is how to use the auspices of democracy to impose socialism later on. And it's premised on winning power, it's premised on getting your comrades into key institutional positions of the state and to boil the frog, so to speak.
That this crisis, this pandemic, is an opportunity that cannot be missed.
Parliament was rightly criticised for shutting and abandoning its oversight role during a period which called for greater monitoring and oversight.
Why is the NDR bad for South Africa? It's because it demands policies and the role of government to be such that the track record of these things have been shown to be horrendous wherever they've been tried. When you want to see the NDR in action, then you really have to ask yourself, where has government power been so centralized that private property rights, healthcare, individual choice of education, individual choice of policing policy, all these things taken away from the citizen and put into a central place. And you might end up with a country, let's call for purposes of this conversation, Zimbabwe or Venezuela. I mean, that really is, if you want to see the NDR in action, look historically where it's been applied and then ask the people what they think of it. That's really the answer. The NDR, it's bad from the get-go and it gets worse.
So how do we stop this national democratic revolution which is being pushed for selfish interest by an ANC and its tripartite alliance elite?
And what will prevent the ANC from actually making us a socialist country is their utter incompetence.
So far, I think South Africans are doing extremely well. Not only have many South Africans, whether through their own businesses or as households and individuals, have worked very, very hard during this pandemic to support individuals, households, and many others who suddenly were pushed to the brink of destitution by providing food, clothing, and other ways. To the embarrassment of the government.
So what we need to do is to encourage South Africans to really go out and vote. It doesn't matter who they vote for, as long as they don't vote for the government that is proven beyond any reasonable doubt that they don't care about them.
The most stupid thing you can do is to allow people who do not pay for their mistakes to make decisions over your life.
We've now to realize that this is really just about control
If we sit here in 10 years' time and we have this conversation again and we're looking back at 10 years of increased success, it will be because South Africans said to themselves, my goodness, it doesn't have to be this way.
At every point, private sector has ensured that this economy does not collapse.
If we sit here in 10 years' time, looking back on a decade of failure, it'll be because South Africans didn't step up, didn't take the power and control that were in a constitutional democracy rightly theirs to take.
The only way out of this crisis is if we institute some enormous reforms.
The biggest battle now is going to be who wins the ideological battle around economic revival and renewal.
The only thing that stands between us and failure and us and success is the decisions we make.
South Africans want South Africa to really be a free market economy.
Now, will we allow the Coronavirus Command Council to just become a footnote of history, or will it become a point of reference to say government power is not the solution?
The South Africans want to see social justice. We cannot be the laughingstock of the world.
But if we succeed, like we as a nation have succeeded before, I mean, the future really could be incredible.